Hello, I am GLuskin, and this is the Rebel Entrepreneur, where we are interviewing some really amazing entrepreneurs and thought leaders who are sharing their stories with us and, talking a little bit about breaking the rules like a boss and kind of giving us a behind the scenes of what it really looks like to be an entrepreneur. And I'm really excited about today's guest, Laura Diaz. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. So I know Laura in real life as well as in business life, and Laura is awesome. We've spent a lot of time together in a mastermind group that we're both a part of, and we've come to realize that we're both kind of the same, where we're really creative and a little bit crazy, and she kind of breaks the rules a lot too, so I like that about her. So I'm really excited to talk to her today.
Thanks for having me, Dawn.
Of course. And so if you're not familiar with Laura's work, she is a branding expert, and she is the founder of Kiss Me Creative. She does branding and business strategy for entrepreneurs that are a little bit edgy and that want to be seen and heard in the world. So welcome. So tell us a little bit about that. You have a really good story about how you ended up becoming an entrepreneur. So
I do. So Kiss Me Creative is a boutique branding and business strategy agency for outspoken entrepreneurs. So Dawn's right, like people who want to be in the spotlight. And it definitely has been an evolution to get here. So I worked in corporate marketing for almost 10 years. And the last job that I had before I took on entrepreneurship, I was hired as a social media marketing coordinator. So it was actually a demotion from my previous job where I'd been a marketing manager, but the company was so swanky that I was like, I'm doing this. I'm going to this swanky company and I'll just work my way up. And I did in a really unexpected way. Just a couple of months after I was hired there, they fired the entire marketing department and they were just like, can you do it? And I was 24 at the time, maybe. And I said, yeah, sure, I can do it, because I was really scared to lose my job. And I just figured it out. I taught myself how to design. I read dozens upon dozens of books on marketing strategy and even like advertising, buying, all kinds of, I had my hands in everything: buying advertising, designing advertising, social media marketing, email marketing. And I really was in a place where I was very, very overwhelmed. But at the same time, I was like, I can't believe I'm getting this opportunity to do this. Like nobody in their right mind would let me do this. So I did that for
good experience. Yeah.
About 3.5 years. And then at the time I was married, and my now ex-husband got a job on the coast of Florida where there were no marketing jobs that I would want after having been like doing something so exciting.
Right.
And I thought, well, here's my chance. Like I've never really cared for following other people's rules, and I'm just going to go for it and start a business. And so the first iteration of my business, I have a passion for yoga and the healing arts. And I really saw a need in that community for them to be served in a way that made sense and felt good to them, but still in a way that was going to get results and that was strategic. There's so much of a lack of strategy in a lot of these heart-centered industries. And so I founded a company called She where I worked exclusively with people who were in the healing arts to create brands and websites and put themselves out into the world in a way that was going to convert, not just in a way that people were going to, oh, I really like that, but I'm not going to pay for it. Right. And I worked with them to learn how to ask for money and add or believe in the value of their services. And then this year I got to a place, I split up with my ex-husband and I moved back to Central Florida. And I got to a place where I was having all of these people say, well, I really want to work with you, but do you only work with yoga teachers? And after so many times of answering that question, I was like, okay, universe, like I hear you. I need to expand my horizons. And that's how Kiss Me Creative came to be. And my focus is really entrepreneurs who are the face of their business. So whether or not they're solopreneurs doesn't matter, but their business revolves around who they are. And they need to communicate that in a way that is understood by their ideal client and that ultimately converts to sales.
Cool. And what I love about your story, like it embodies like the true entrepreneur spirit, especially like when you were faced with like having to learn all these new job tasks in your corporate job. Like most people would have probably been like, I'm out of here. Like I can't do this. You know, you were like doing the work of probably 4 or 5 or 6 different people, but you know, an entrepreneur, that's like a day in the life, right? Sometimes you're doing the job of 4 or 5 or 6 different people, and you just roll up in your sleeves and you're like, okay, I've never designed the ClickFunnel page before, but today I'm going to learn ClickFunnels, and and then you do it.
It's true. I didn't have any idea at the time that I was relatively unfazed by entrepreneurship as a result of that job.
Yeah, because you're used to it, and that's just day in the life. But so I think a lot of people sometimes don't understand branding. Like, what is branding? Sometimes people think, oh, logos or fonts, or it's just a pic. They think of like Coca-Cola or like, something, and they have an image, but it's so much more than that. So, but how do you describe branding?
Yes, that's a really good question. The other big thing that happens with branding is that people get it confused with marketing, which we can talk about in a minute. But branding within the confines of personal branding. So I'm going to stick to that right now, and we can discuss other stuff like along the way. But it's being able to communicate who you are to the people you serve, the people you want to buy from you, in a way that's understood by them and makes them feel like they have a relationship with you and ultimately leads to sales. And that communication is done via logo and design elements, but it's also done through the words that you choose and the messages that you choose to stick to. So word choice is one thing. Messaging, meaning these are the things that my brand talks about because I want my brand to be known for that, is another thing. Right. So there are all of these moving parts and pieces. When we talk about personal brands that are service-based, those are the biggest things. Like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? When you look at Coca-Cola, I mean, that's where the brand, when you think of brands, your mind goes to the Coca-Colas and the Apples of the world. And what those companies have done to be so known is consistently show up with the same look and feel, even as they evolve. So Apple's products have evolved tremendously over the last decade even, but the look and the feel and their purpose has remained the same, and so their customers have remained loyal. Coca-Cola, it's interesting to look at a company like Coca-Cola, with as much Coca-Cola as I do not drink, but it's interesting to look at that because they have been so consistent in their visual design for decades. But they've still evolved with the times. So there's this delicate balance in being able to communicate who you are and being consistent, but you have to make a commitment to evolve with the times and with what your clients are needing. Because your demographic will evolve, especially if you're in business for decades, like Coca-Cola and Apple. You start to serve a different market that has different needs. And all of that comes together to be this persona, be it for a product or a service, that you have to consistently show up as, and you have to create guidelines for that. Otherwise, you're only human and you are inconsistent, and so your brand will show up inconsistently.
Right. And I've been to some of your events and heard you talk about branding before, and I like that you give the example that even if you don't have a business, you're still kind of like a walking brand, right? I like that analogy. And what would you give like an example of that? Like how people show up on social media and
yeah, that's a great example, how you show up on social media. And it's makes me cringe. Although my personal Facebook account it definitely is in brand, because my personal brand, so separate from my, sorry, I have like hair on my face. My personal brand, separate from my business brand, is like, I have no shame in the fact that like I'm a messy human being and I find humor in all of the tragedy that results as a result of me just kind of ripping through life. And so I do say things that like some people will be like, oh, that's inappropriate, but it's not inappropriate because it's who I am and I'm consistent about it. And I'm not like whining or complaining. I just am being humorous about the reality that is life. Now, for somebody else, like that kind of humor maybe isn't appropriate. If you're a pharmaceutical sales rep a really serious company, you probably shouldn't be cracking jokes about mismatched socks on social media. So even if you're not an entrepreneur, what you say does matter, because you don't know where your referrals are going to come from. You don't know when you're going to need your next job. Everything that you do that's in the public eye is essentially your own personal brand. And we're imperfect, like we're all human and we are all inconsistent. But it's just important to take into consideration, like, what are you okay with putting out there? And as an entrepreneur, like one day, what if I want to go get a job at a multi-million-dollar company a decade from now? Everything that I'm doing right now is going to affect that. So pretty much I'm ensuring that I'll never go a corporate job.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I'm always talking, with my clients when it comes to story and messaging about, infusing more of your personality and more of your real story and your real life into your business, because I think that's important. People want to see the real person. But you're right, there's another side of that too, but you maybe don't want to put too much, depending on what you do. Who is your audience? Like, that's part of your brand too. Who is your audience? What's your intention? And someone that's has a very corporate audience versus someone that's working with, hippies and yogis, you can have different things you can put out that are acceptable.
And it's a delicate balance, because ultimately, if you are too buttoned up, people know when you're faking it, right? If you're always hashtagging blessed and everything is coming up sunshine and rainbows, that's not really indicative of who we are as humans. So you do have to give yourself some grace in like being human, because perfect people are not real. And so it's okay to give yourself that grace, but you do have to think, like, what are my long-term goals here and how am I going to support that?
Yeah. And then the other end of the spectrum is, you don't want to be like all Jerry Springer and put like all your dirty laundry out there for the world to. It's like, oh, I'm going to share all my like skeletons in my closet and people are going to come buy for me. Like, no, it doesn't work like that either. So there is a delicate balance.
And I mean, you have to find it. Nobody can tell you. It's easier within the confines of business for sure versus personal branding. No one can tell you in like, oh, don't put, I mean, I could sit next to you and tell you, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be the perfect mix. You have to be intuitive and see how people respond to things, just like in marketing, right? So on the other end of the spectrum, there is marketing, which is a sister to branding, but they are different, right? Branding is what and who you are and the way that you communicate that. Marketing is the platforms and the tasks that you do to get that out into the world and turn your brand into a relationship with clients that leads to sales. And when you look at marketing, you're always measuring things to see if they work. There's not like a one size fits all formula for your marketing strategy. You have to say, oh, this, based on what I know, this will likely work, but then you have to measure it and keep the pulse, keep your finger on the pulse of it. And it's the same with your brand. Like, are people responding to this or are they not? And if they're not, something needs to change.
Yeah, good points. And well, knowing how much work it is to build a brand, I mean, it's not an overnight thing. It takes a lot of time, and you did a very good job of building your brand for Sheoms, and you had a lot of great clients and beautiful websites, and I've seen a lot of them, really nice design, and you were in that niche and people knew you, and then you made this decision to like expand, because like you said, people kept asking you outside. So that's like very ambitious and awesome, and in the long term it's going to be awesome, but in the short term, is that a little bit scary? Because then you're starting all over. You got to do that whole, you're basically square one, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
It's funny. I mean, I just sent out an email about this yesterday, being really transparent with the fact that it is hard. Yeah. And the first time that I did it, there was a certain level of naivety where I was like, yeah, full force ahead. But this time it's draining, because I know that it's going to take time and that it's going to be a lot of work all over again, right? When you start something, you have to create the momentum, and creating momentum is really, really hard work. Once you create it, then well-oiled machines will maintain it. Right. But it's been a struggle for me, because I'm used to having referrals all the time, and I'm used to not having to do a lot of hustle to get my clients, because they already know me and I'm getting known all over again. And it's taken a lot of support for me to stay in the right headspace, because I know it's the right decision. Like you said, in the long term, this is it. Like, this is a company that can grow into something, into really anything that I want it to be. Right. In the short term, I sometimes feel exhausted, and it's so important for me to have a business coach and for me to be surrounded by entrepreneurs who can keep me grounded and tell me, like, there is a difference, Laura, between what you are feeling and what is true. Because the facts are that what I'm doing is effective, right? People are opening my emails. People are active in my Facebook group. People are engaging with my blog posts, and I am becoming known as the Kiss Me Creative brand. It's just not happening at the lightning speed that I want it to.
Well, it's all about time and consistency. That's probably like the number one thing with branding and marketing and any kind of messaging is consistent over time. People hear you say it over and over and over, and then they're like, okay, I get it. I want to work with you.
Right. And it's really easy when you don't see results immediately to stop being consistent.
Right.
And then what, Then you never really know if something's working. I always, when I work with my clients and we're implementing new marketing strategies, I tell them, can you commit to this for 3 to 6 months? Because if you do it for a month and it doesn't work and you stop, you don't actually know whether or not it's working.
Yeah. That's a good point. And it's interesting too, how it's sometimes the lessons we're always giving our clients, then we need them for ourselves sometimes too. It's like, or even too, it's like, I tell people all the time about consistency, and I've been like so busy with new clients and, producing this summit and things like that, I don't even remember the last time I did an email. It's been over a month, which is like marketing suicide.
Right.
It's bad, but it's like, I'm human too. And, so, you have to like walk your talk as a leader, but then you also give yourself a little bit of space sometimes when you need it, because we all have, life gets in the way and things like that too. So.
Right. And that's also why I feel like as your business reaches a certain threshold, it's really, the consistency becomes even more important, because you have to maintain it. It doesn't matter if you're sick. It doesn't matter if there's a hurricane. And that's when it's important to have a team.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think your story is a really good lesson for entrepreneurs. And, it's that whole like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you were in a safe business and you knew you'd have money coming in, and you could have just stuck with status quo, but to know that there's so much more potential out there. And so to take a risky move. So I think, entrepreneurism is about taking risks. And, just keep the faith, keep the vision, and just keep doing the work. And if you keep showing up, you'll get the results. So, and I know you will, because you're awesome.
I'm showing up. Here I
am. One of the things that has come up with a couple of the other people I've been talking with in this summit is, as far as being a rebel entrepreneur, is like doing things a little differently. And there's a lot of like programs out there that they'll tell you, just follow this 10-step program and you're going to make $1 million in 30 days. And, that whole thing. And there's a lot of people in the industry that are just like, kind of roll their eyes when they see that, because we know there's no such thing as that, right? Any overnight success story didn't tell you the 10 years of blood, sweat, and tears, lots of tears before they were a success. It's good marketing. Who doesn't want to be on a beach with their laptop and, just making money, watching the money, but it's not real. But, there's a lot of people out there that have spent like thousands of dollars on these types of programs and haven't gotten the results. And then they start feeling like, oh, what am I doing wrong? So that's like a big thing in the industry. And a lot of people, are frustrated with that. Have you had any clients that have fallen into that trap? And what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Yeah, a lot of my clients have purchased programs, and my thoughts on this whole thing. Oh, let me not sit on my foot. My thoughts on this whole thing are, programs are really useful if you know nothing about a particular topic. So it's great. I have a $97 branding program that I still sell under the Shioms brand, that if you know nothing about branding, it is a solid foundation. And I've taken a lot of programs like that, like under $300. I just took a Facebook groups course.
Yeah.
And it was like about $300, and it was full of content, and it's something that I didn't really know much about. But when it comes to the nitty gritty of your business and how you're going to get from 0 figures to 6 figures, it's not a formula. And I find it invaluable to actually have somebody consult or coach you through it. Like, there's not a substitute for that, because there's a certain level of accountability. The price point is much higher, and so you are more likely to be accountable just because of the price point, let alone having to answer to another person. And they're able to really look at your business and objectively see things that you can't see, because you're always treading water. In the first 3 years of business, most people are treading water, and so you cannot see above like that water line. So to bring somebody else in who can see above the water line and who can speak vision into you and keep you inspired is really valuable. I think one of the most important things that I have done in my business is invest in a real live person, a real live group of people who can look at my business and say, like, hey, you need to get it together. Like, this is not happening for you because you're being lazy, or you do have leads. Like, why are you telling me that you don't? No program is going to speak to you with that kind of authenticity and just directness of like, you have all of this potential and it's on you to do it. So are you going to step up?
Right. And everyone's path is so different too. That's why like the cookie cutter approach doesn't work. Like you said, you need someone that's going to sit there and look at your business, which is going to be different than my business, and whoever, anyone else that's watching this business. We're all, even if we're in the same, segment of the market, we bring very different things to the table. We might serve different people. We come at it a different way. Like, everyone is so unique. And if you're not unique in your business, and you maybe are just copying someone else, and that's not going to work either. So I think it's important for people to really, think about, what they're passionate about. Like, why are you doing this? Like, what lights you up? And that should be the driving force that kind of, makes all decisions for you.
Oh yeah. And even as you move into doing something like choosing a consultant or a coach, it's important to look at like, who am I? Do I jive with them? And like, is this person willing? Here's a big thing. Is this person willing to tell me things that I don't necessarily want to hear? Because you don't want to pay somebody to validate you. You want to pay somebody who's going to help you make money in your business.
Yes, for sure. So if there's anyone listening to this now that's like, just realized like, maybe I don't have a brand, or, maybe I'm still unclear on branding, like, what would you say to them? What are some good first steps, and what should they do?
Well, if you're not sure if you have a brand, you can go to kissmecreative.com and download my free brand assessment. That'll help you make some decisions about that. And then in terms of like sorting that out, you really have to figure out, the biggest questions that I ask my clients are, who are you? What do you do? Why do you do it? How do you want to make people feel? And who are those people who you want to make feel that way? And if you can collect the answers to those 5 questions, then you can come to somebody like me and they can really help you refine that vision and turn it into visuals and messaging and specific word choice and all of the things that will communicate it clearly to the people who most need to understand it.
Right.
I think that is one of the biggest mistakes people make in branding, is that they're like, well, my mom doesn't get it. Well, is your mom your ideal client? Like,
Right. Good point. And it's important too to be consistent over all platforms. So your website, your social media, and just how you show up in person and all these things. And you want to be consistent all the time so people know. So, I've heard other people talk about, or maybe it was even you, that they'll know just even by the fonts and the colors that's your post as it comes through their feed.
Yes.
Laura's pictures, or,
That was me for sure who said that. Like, where you just know by the look and feel of something that it belongs to someone. And that's what leads you to stop and pay attention.
Right. And that's when you know you have a brand, is when people are seeing that and they're like, without even reading it, oh, this is one of Laura's posts. Let me check it out. Yeah.
And even within my brand, if you go to all of the clients that I've worked with, whether you're looking at their brand guides or you're looking at their websites, we have a specific style. Kiss Me Creative. I was actually just talking to my business coach about this. So whether it's in somebody's newsfeed that you see consistency from post to post to post, and so you start to recognize that it's them, or even in my case with Kiss Me Creative, our design style is distinct. And he looked at like 15 websites that we had done in the last 6 months and was like, yeah, I can tell that all of this is you. And that's great in a lot of ways because it's what makes our clients know that we're a good fit for them from a design standpoint. And it also creates this outward appearance, like other people who are not our clients, but maybe who are going from one of those websites to the other can say like, wow, I really like this style. And then maybe if they like it enough, they scroll to the bottom and see that we did it.
Right.
And so there's consistency, not just in your social media presence or in your email marketing or in your website, but also consistency in the quality and style of whatever it is that you produce. It's also branding. It's just a different kind. I've used this example before, like branding and dating are similar. So like when you start dating someone, you like want to be looking your best. Like you wash your hair and you blow it out and you do your makeup. And if you want to maintain a great relationship into like a marriage takes work. And so you have to continue to do that stuff even once you're in it. And we fail miserably at that in relationships. And we also fail at it in business. We think that it's all about wooing the customer and flirting with them and getting them on the inside. And then we don't deliver a consistent branded service or product once they're on the inside. And so it creates this discrepancy.
That's a great analogy. And I think it'll help people too that maybe don't quite understand still like branding. Like that's great analogy. You got to keep going, consistency.
Yeah.
And too, when people start recognizing your stuff, you know, like this is similar, like that's good. That's when you know you're doing branding right.
Yeah.
So I have one last question, and this is a question I've been asking all of our guests, and it's to go along with that theme that, you know, there's no one size fits all like business strategy or, you know, because we're all different. So my question is, can you think of any business advice that you got that, you know, on the surface seemed like really good advice, but when you applied it to your business, you didn't get the results you were expecting?
Yeah, so it's twofold this. So digital products, like go create digital products. And that was fine. Like I've sold, you know, maybe $25,000 of digital products this year, and that's great, but that's not the bulk of my business. And I had to work so hard for it, and it wasn't fun. And part of marketing digital products is email sales funnels, which are really effective, but it's all like a delicate balance. I mean, everything's a delicate balance. It's all a delicate balance. And the way that it works for me is that because of my brand and the way that I interact with my community, so I do a lot of video. I'm super vulnerable in my emails. I mean, I talk about messy things about overeating and divorce and all of these things that you're like, how is this related to business? I always relate it back to business.
You do get that.
And so I have a relationship with my clients before I ever get to talk to them. Before they ever become my clients, they actually know me. So it's not that they think that they know me. Like I've shared so much of myself. Right. And so when they come to me, they want to work with me. They don't want necessarily to buy a book or an e-course or something else that doesn't allow them to have interaction. Like they're ready to know me in real life by the time that they are wanting to get on the phone with me. And so my digital products that I invested so much time and a lot of money in getting the sales funnels done and Facebook ads, like just haven't been worth it to me. It was more struggle than anything. And part of that too is that I don't enjoy it. So that's the other thing that you have to think about. Because if you don't enjoy something, it doesn't matter like whether I made $25,000 off of it or not, I didn't enjoy it. So that's already a failure in itself.
And that's a good example because a lot of people will swear by digital products and, you know, it's like what you can scale your business because you don't have to be in it one-on-one. But, you know, what you're saying is what you offer as one-on-one is so valuable and you enjoy it. So that doesn't make sense for you. So that's a great example. Well, as always, it's been so nice chatting with you, Laura. Thanks for sharing about branding. And I'm sure everyone learned a lot. But if you want to do a brand assessment, go to Kiss Me Creative laura.com. And make sure you follow Laura, get on our email list, and follow her on social media because she's always giving great advice, and she's funny and she's awesome. So go do it.
Thanks, Tom. Stay classy, Rebels.
Bye.